Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's June 13, 6:30 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. I'm Dr. Rafish, owner of Vet Triage. Super early this morning, 'cause I have a long day of meetings and didn't want to miss a stream if I can avoid missing one. So I figured we would talk about something that I dealt with at the hospital yesterday. And I was helping my friend at her facility in Southern Highlands and talk about when you know it's time to put your pet to sleep. So we'll start the day off with that way. I do have a video, by the way, on my channel about euthanasia, about when it's time, and also the process of euthanasia as well, how it's unique to the vet field. So feel free to check out that. This will be more kind of a cursory overview on at least my thought process on euthanasia, and you guys can, of course, share your own experiences in the comment section and all that good stuff. So euthanasia is unique to veterinary medicine, other than I think maybe like a couple of locations in the world where a person can elect to end their life, like legally and medically or whatever. It's not a common practice, whereas in the vet field, it is insanely common. Dare I say, maybe even overused. I don't know. I mean, the shelters are a good example where they are out of space. They can't hold all these animals, and so they're euthanizing like crazy. And we shouldn't. What ended up happening over time is, to some degree, we got used to the concept of euthanasia, which is, killing an animal, ending its life. So, but for this discussion, we're not going to talk about, euthanasias for that reason, for like, excessive population of a species, and lack of resources to care for them. We're going to talk more about pets who have an ailment, a disease, a condition, trauma, and their quality of life has declined. So that's what we're going to focus on. There are other reasons to euthanize animals that are acceptable, like the shelter scenario, or if you're dealing with an infectious disease that's spreading, things like that. Okay, so an animal's dangerous. That's another example. Okay, so quality of life. So quality of life, of course, is very important for any animal, human or non-human. For our domesticated pets, especially paramount, because the time that you adopt your pet, there's a very high likelihood they're going to not outlive you. And so at some point, unless they die of natural causes or acutely from some major trauma or illness, for the most part, if they live to geriatric age, then they're going to, you may face that decision of whether or not it's time. And we're very concerned about that, because obviously we hold domesticated animals close to us, dear to our hearts, and they rely on us for an excellent quality of life, for longevity, prosperity, all that good stuff. So it's we feel that it's our responsibility as human beings, as pet owners, to allow them the opportunity that if we view that they're suffering, that we can voluntarily end that suffering. Now, from the animal's perspective, their life is how their life is. They don't have sort of the forethought, the ability to see into the future, so to speak, whereas we do. We know that life is finite. We know that time is limited on these mortal planes, and we recognize that. And we also remember what was. If you're 90 years old now and you're in hospice care, you can, for the most part, depending on what's going on with you, but you can recall what your life was like in your 20s and 30s and 40s and all that. So, and you can reminisce. And whereas animals, they accept, again, I believe they accept their life as it is at the moment, and they deal with that. You can sometimes tell when an animal is not surviving, not doing well, declining. They tend to isolate themselves, and even in a home environment, they'll isolate themselves, start hiding, they'll stop eating. They kind of know time is up, and their body's shutting down. And I believe that they do this to protect the herd, to protect the group. And so if you are part of that dogs or cats herd, part of the pack, then if they are slowing down and they know that and things are off, they are now putting the pack in danger for predators, because if they keep hanging around, they are basically they are a hindrance to the progression of the group, and so predators are more likely to attack, and because the group now is vulnerable because of the weakest link. So that sick animal will, to some degree, I believe, voluntarily, I suppose, or maybe instinctively, isolate themselves and say, "Look, my time's up. I can't risk the group. Let me go hide somewhere and go." So that's just sort of some broad concepts in terms of when do you euthanize. Um, it's a quality of life decision, right? And so you should be basing it on how the pet is currently existing and not what the diagnosis is. So let's say you take your pet to the hospital for some generic symptoms, and they do some tests and they find out, oh my goodness, your 14-year-old dog has cancer, and it's inoperable, it's not treatable, or the measures that it would take to treat the cancer are considered heroic, high risk, expensive, all the things. And now it's a quality of life decision. Well, like I said, in that example, just had generic symptoms, and it was sort of found by surprise that this pet has cancer. So, otherwise, let's say that this pet is doing fine at home, and do you now euthanize, right? Do you do that? And so my answer would be probably not. You don't want to euthanize based on the diagnosis per se. You're not euthanizing because of that. You're euthanizing because the quality of life has declined. And despite a horrible diagnosis rather, if your pet is still eating, drinking, enjoying life, like yesterday was fine and today we're a little bit off and that's about it, well then don't euthanize just because the diagnosis was such. Even though we know that diagnosis is detrimental, it's terminal, it's severe, it's all that stuff, it's not. You're not euthanizing the disease. You're euthanizing the animal because you believe that the quality of life has declined. So a similar example would be something like you have a medical condition. Your doctor checks blood work. You're doing fine, and your doctor says, "Oh, based on these values, we may have to change your medication." And you're like, "Well, I'm doing fine. I feel great from the last medication you gave me." And the question is, does that doctor treat the patient or treat the numbers on the lab work? And most of the time, we're going to be treating the patient, not the numbers in the lab work. You can let the patient know, look, on paper, we should probably change your meds, but if you're feeling pretty good, here are the pros and cons of not changing the treatment and not treating the numbers. So hopefully that analogy helps. So beyond that, how do you know it's time? Well, generally speaking, if your pet is no longer enjoying things that they enjoyed the most before they got sick or before they got old or whatever it is, then it may be time. Then most people will gauge the pet's appetite and the pet's interest in performing activities that it used to enjoy. So let's say your dog was an avid swimmer, loves swimming, and over the past few years kind of slowed down, and now it's your dog's even having difficulty walking upstairs, and has no interest in being in the pool, and seems kind of not lethargic necessarily, but just sort of disinterested. We would use the word depressed, sad, and most people will say, "Oh man, the dog's gotten old, not even using the stairs. Doesn't enjoy swimming anymore, seems kind of miserable, like maybe it's time." And the eating and drinking thing is an obvious one. We enjoy seeing our animals eating and drinking. We enjoy the fact that they have hunger, they're willing to eat, they can hold the food down, metabolize it, and we view that as a source of love on our end because you can take care of that pet. So if they stop eating and stop drinking, and especially if they're like now throwing up and they have diarrhea and all that, and it's deemed not treatable, or you've been trying treatments not working or whatever it is, but a lot of people will consider a loss of appetite, a persistent long-term loss of appetite, as being a valid reason for euthanizing the pet as well. And so those are two very broad, very common things. There may be other things, So, for example, there's a condition. I have a video on this on my channel called laryngeal paralysis in dogs, and once the dog is diagnosed with it, they can no longer do things like swim, for example. And some pet owners will say, "Look, if my dog can't swim or can't chase a ball or whatever because of this disease, then I can't. I don't think that my dog would enjoy living anymore." It's that fundamental to us that we appreciate the activities that your pet loves to do. We appreciate it so much that they stop doing it. We are considering euthanasia, which is a one-way street. So, so yeah, so those are some basic guidelines for how to know when it's time. Just be thorough about your thought process. Try, even though it's an emotional decision, try and make it as a logical decision as possible, because it is a one-way street. You can't turn your back on it. Once it's done, it's done. And you don't want to have regret you don't have regret or remorse for your decision. You want to be able to say that was the right decision. I would do it again if I was stuck in the same scenario. So hopefully that helps. Feel free to comment in the comment section, subscribe, spread the word, donate, support the channel. And yeah, still waiting for our first audience member. Hopefully any day now we'll have somebody join our live streams. A bit of a depressing topic this morning, but I think very important, very common, and hopefully it helped you folks out. I'll talk to you soon. I hope to be on tomorrow, Friday, June 14th, 2024, for another tantalizing live stream.